Breathing in, I establish myself in the present moment. Breathing out, it's a wonderful moment. Present moment, wonderful moment. J'inspire, je m'établis dans le moment présent. J'expire, c'est un moment merveilleux. Moment présent, moment merveilleux.
Dear respected Thai, dear noble community, today is May the 15th in the year 2022. We are in the lower hamlet in Plum village, France. Today is a joyful day. It's a very festive day. I already felt it just arriving in lower hamlet, seeing everybody gather in front of the place where we will all have a chance to bathe the baby Buddha, because today we celebrate a day of manifestation and continuation. Around the Buddhist traditions, in this week, many communities are coming together to celebrate the birth of the Buddha. But in our tradition, when we celebrate the birth of the Buddha, Vesak, we don't touch and learn only about the historical Buddha, but we learn to identify and to recognize the Buddha nature that is present in every single one of us. But I would like to share a little bit about the historical Buddha, because the story is fascinating and it is a teaching in itself. Siddhartha was born as a young prince, but at the moment of manifestation, at the moment of birth, the baby Siddhartha also already experienced suffering, experienced loss. Because when Siddhartha was born, his mother didn't make it. She gave life to a baby, but she also lost her life in that moment. So for the little Siddhartha, he already touched something very deep in him, the feeling of loss. And maybe he might not experience it, but that connection and that interbeing, the language we use today of mother and children, is deeply connected to our core. We can say that the most pleasant time that we experienced was when we started to manifest in the womb of our mother. When we were in the womb of our mother, we didn't have to do anything. Our mother would breathe for us. Our mother would eat for us, would drink for us, and would live her life. And it had a very deep connection to us right away. And we can say that we enjoy the love that was being offered to us for 9 months. And if our mother was mindful and skillful, she see the interrelationship by her daily action, how it is a transmission to her continuation in her womb in that very moment. And our father or our partner, if he or she is also mindful, his and her action will have also connection to the womb inside. So already when we manifested, we were learning about love by the care that we were receiving. And when the moment come, when we wanted to manifest into the world, we had to take the first breath for the first time by ourselves. We had to spit out the liquid that was inside of our lungs. And we all had to make that courageous action, breathing in for the first time and breathing out. And also that was a moment of disconnection. And therefore, there is a deep nature in us, the nature of love, the nature to be loved, and at the same time, the nature to love. And that is something that is an element, one of the elements of true love that we learn later on in Buddhism. And that is alive in every one of us. And so young Siddhartha, luckily, growing up, he had a lot of love from his father and his auntie, who saw him as her own child. But young Siddhartha was a very curious young prince. He was always asking questions and looking at the reality of life. He was able to see what is happiness and what is suffering. But when he was born, many great sages came to visit the little baby. And all of them gave a fortune telling in order to also to have a good relationship to the kingdom. And many sages saw that if all the conditions are right, this prince will become a great ruler, a ruler to conquer many kingdoms. And his father, the king, was very happy to hear this. But there was one sage who, when visited the young prince, started to cry. And his father, the king, was very alarmed by this. And he said, "Dear sage, why are you crying? Is there misfortune that will come towards my son?" And the sage said, "What I see is that he can also be a ruler for not kingdoms, but be a great teacher for the whole world. And if he has the right condition, he will embark on a spiritual journey that help liberate many living beings. And I am crying because I am so old, and I know one day I will have to die. And so I won't be able to witness this young baby grow into a great teacher." But the king was very alarmed by this information, because the king, in his agenda, he didn't want his son to be a spiritual practitioner. He wanted him to be a great continuation of him, which is to be a great ruler. And so when Siddhartha was growing up, he was spoiled. The king only wanted Siddhartha to see happiness and to only have the greatest pleasures around him and the greatest luxury around him, so that he wouldn't seek a path of spirituality. And in the sutras and in the stories, Siddhartha had 4 kingdoms, so that he can always enjoy the most comfortable climate, weather, the most beautiful flowers that will bloom in the 4 seasons, the fruits of the 4 seasons. But nevertheless, the curious mind will always try to understand the world. And we can call this the seed of seeking. The seeking, we want to understand. And luckily, one day, Siddhartha wanted to go into the village, and he had a good friend, which was his attendant. And him and his attendant would ride down into the village to visit the people. And Siddhartha would dress like a normal person so that he can see the world as it is. And on this voyage, it was a voyage of awakening for him, because he was able to see 4 images that brought out the curiosity in him. The first image that he saw was a funeral. And he saw many, many people in sorrow and many people crying. And he got to see a dead body. But he who was always entertained by only happiness and life around him didn't know what was happening. So he asked his attendant, Channa, what is going on? What is happening? Why is there such emotions here like this? What are these emotions? And Channa was an attendant, but was a friend. And he was more down to earth than Siddhartha. And he said, "Oh, my young prince, this is what we call death. This is what we call a funeral. The ones that are around him are paying homage to someone that is very dear to them, who is now not part of this world anymore." And Siddhartha looked at Channa and said, "Will I die? Will the ones that I love, the ones that are so close to me, will they also die?" And Channa said, Of course, young prince. To be born as a human, it is a gift to be alive, but all of us one day we will also have to die." So that was an experience that touched a seed in the young prince, the understanding that to be born also means one day we also have to die. We also have to leave this space, this place, this planet that we are living on. And all the ones that we hold dear to us one day will also leave. And so they continue on their journey. And then he saw a person that was very ill, very sick. And in his skin, there was a lot of marks of illness. And it was something that was very cruel. He saw something that was not beautiful. And once again, he asked his friend, his attendant, "Channa, why is this person like this? Why isn't his skin like us?" And his friend said, "Oh, Siddhartha, this is someone who has illness. He has some skin disease. And it is very normal for us to get sick." And once again, the prince looked inside and asked his friend, "Channa, will I get sick too? Do I have to get sick? Is it also a part of life?" And his attendant said, "Of course, young prince. That's a full package once we're born on this planet." He didn't say it like this. This is today's language. I don't know how he exactly expressed it, but we can see it like that. He said, "Dear young prince, being born, that's a package. We're all of the nature to get ill. We all have to get sick." And that was another realization. And they continued down the village. And he saw a woman who had a hunchback, very old, very weak, walking with a cane. Weak legs, weak knees. And so we have to remember, this is a time that there was no internet, no social media, no Wikipedia, no Google. So whatever you see in front of you, that's your world. So the only world that Siddhartha had was the world that was curated by his father to give him the best education, the best food, the best images around him, only healthy people. So when Siddhartha started to see images that were not what he daily saw, it all was a question mark. What is this? The curiosity. And he wanted to investigate. And once again, he asked his good friend, China, what is this? Why is she walking like that? Why is her knee so weak and her back so bent? And China said, oh, my young prince, you probably never seen it, but this is old age. And of course, Siddhartha asked, will I grow old? Will I get weak? And China said, of course, dear prince, we all have to get old. Your father will get old. I will get old. All of your closest friends one day will get old and need support. And that was another realization that Siddhartha had. And the last image that he saw that was recorded. And this story was recounted because we can see it as the conditions that come together for us to embark on a spiritual journey. And the last image that he saw was a monk walking freely in the village. Maybe he was going on alms round, going for begging for food, but he saw that this spiritual seeker was walking with freedom. And it was an image that once again, he has never seen. And he asked his friend. So we see how important it is to have good friends on the path that can tell you the truth, and so that can help you open your eyes. And luckily, Chana was very down to earth, and he wanted to tell the Siddhartha exactly what is happening, and didn't have another agenda to keep the prince in a kind of setting where he only has one view. And so his friends, Chana said, my dear prince, this is someone who we call a spiritual seeker, a monk, someone who has left everything behind, his power, his craving, his wealth, and to seek on a journey to look for liberation. And that image and that answer stayed in Siddhartha. And today we call it the seed of bodhicitta, the seed of awakening, the seed of wanting to understand, to be more liberated. And so Siddhartha had a lot of good condition, but he was never satisfied with the life of a prince. He didn't want to just be a politician. He saw that even with the greatest power, there was still a lot of suffering. His father, who can be the most powerful person in that kingdom, still, he had so much suffering. He had so much stress. He had so much tension. And the ones that are around him sometimes are not honest. So Siddhartha started to realize that this is not true happiness. This is not freedom. Even with the greatest power and the greatest wealth, it doesn't give us the freedom and the liberation from the suffering that we experience in daily life. Siddhartha was married and he had a son, Rahula. And his wife was also a very deep spiritual friend. And she understood Siddhartha very deeply. She understood her husband's deepest aspiration. So she had an intuition that one day my husband may seek a path of spirituality, and he may leave this kingdom. And I'm sure that they've had many sessions together to talk about their deepest aspiration and desire. Because Yasodhara, his wife, was also like an activist. In the book O Path White Cloud that our teacher wrote, we can see that she would come to the slums in India to help with the poor children, with the education, and the medication. And so both of them had something that connected them, which was to serve other people and to see that the individual happiness is not enough. And so one day, Siddhartha felt it was time. It was time to embark on this journey. And he created a party with music, food, and alcohol, so that all of his friends and close ones would all get drunk, and they would fall asleep, and he would use this opportunity to sneak out of the kingdom. And it was a very courageous moment. And before he left, he looked at his companion, his wife, very deeply one more time. Because even though she is sleeping, that is what it looks like, but maybe she's not. But she is closing her eyes in order to support her husband's journey. And he had a very deep vow at that moment. Because he seek this path not for himself. He seek the path to find understanding so that he can offer to other people. And first of all, his closest family, the ones who are very dear to him. And so that was his aspiration. I am not going on this path just for myself. I'm not seeking enlightenment just for myself. But I have to start with oneself in order so later I can offer to others. And he made a deep aspiration that when I find a path, I will come back home to share it. And so he left that night with his attendant, Shana. And he made his journey. And through his spiritual adventure, he met many great teachers and many great friends. Until one day, from the teachers that he's met, he learned all that they can offer, but it was still not enough to touch the understanding of liberation. And he had a view that to be totally free, we should be free from our body. We should have no more feelings and emotions. We should be totally liberated from all of that. And so he started a practice of just sitting, asceticism, and just to feel the pain, to feel all the emotions of the body, what it goes through. And later on, four of his friends, or five of his friends from other communities came and joined, because they also have touched liberation from the other teachers, but still not touched the awakening mind yet. And through this practice, they had a very strict practice. They only eat what comes to them. And in some of the artists who have drew this period of the Buddha's time, of Siddhartha sitting and all of his ribs showing. And he was also facing the fear that manifests by sitting in the forest, recognizing old age, birth, death, all of the experience that he would come. Until one day he had an understanding in the meditation. He saw that what I am doing to myself is too extreme, and it is not correct. If we are to seek liberation and to seek understanding, we should also look at the well-being of our life. If I have this body, it is a gift. It is like a miracle to be born on this planet. All of the conditions have come together for me to be alive. My father, my mother, but then my environment, my society, all of the education, all of the friends, all of the people who have supported me on this path. So I cannot treat this body like this. I cannot see that this body is only an instrument. And so this was a realization that this was a wrong practice. And this was a very crucial moment for Siddhartha, because that was a moment of a deep understanding that the practice wasn't going correct. And he had to learn to let go of that idea, let go of that view. And he then saw that the first thing he had to do was to get up and to nourish his body again. And in that moment that he got up and to go for an alms round to the village to seek some food, his friends that were practicing with him, they saw that Siddhartha has surrendered to desire and has given up on spirituality, or on the idea of what they had of spirituality and awakening. And at that moment, they all gave him a cold shoulder. And that is a very difficult moment, I think. Because no matter what, we're all humans, right? And when our friends see us and behave like that, it also hurts. And because there's not understanding, and so therefore they have a view towards us. But Siddhartha still felt that this was the right thing to do. And he trusted his insight that I have to nourish this body in order to continue the path of practice, the meditation, the deep looking, and the understanding. And so on the journey, he walked down the river and he fainted. And this part I love, this part of the story, I love this part. Because he was saved by a child, by a young girl who was going into the forest to offer food to the forest god. And we know that there's many tradition and many religion in the world, and in India at that time and still today, they believe that there are gods that protect and holds the forest, the oceans, the rivers. And so this young girl was instructed by her mother to go down to the forest and to offer food to the gods. But when this young girl saw that a seeker has fainted, she went up and she said, I don't know if a God exists or not, but I know someone here who definitely needs food. And so she was also very open and not dogmatic. And I said, this food is only for the gods. Humans, you're not good enough. And so she went up and she gave goat milk to the Buddha, to Siddhartha. The Buddha wasn't yet named the Buddha. And after the Siddhartha tasted the goat milk, there was so much sensation. Wow, just the fragrance, the feeling of the nutriment coming in. And the first word he told the girl was like, a little more, please. And she, of course, was so happy to support Siddhartha. And she asked him, why did you faint it? What are you doing? And Siddhartha explained to her, had a companion, had a friend who he can share his journey with. And later on, this little girl told Siddhartha, dear Siddhartha, every day my mother will ask me to bring the food to the forest, and I will divert my journey, and I will come to you to give you food. So you don't need to go and waste time to go and ask for food. Let me be a support. Let me help you on your path of practice. And this was like the spirit of donation. Like, you are someone who has invested your whole life to this. As something I can do, let me bring you the food. And Siddhartha was very grateful. He joined his palm to a little girl, and he offered his gratitude. But Siddhartha said, but from time to time, I need to go to the village. I need to go to the village to also be in touch with the people, in order to be in touch with the world. Because our practice is not just for ourselves. Our practice is an offering also to the ones who support us. And that is why it is our tradition to always have the right conditions to still be connected to everyone that comes to us. And we from time to time need to go to places so that we can offer the fruit of our practice, so that we can connect to the world. And that is also the nutriment that we need to find in the spiritual path. And from this experience that Siddhartha went through, he started to understand that we also need to learn to cherish life. Life is a gift. We are alive. Our teacher has a calligraphy. Breathe, you are alive. It is so simple, but there is a deep teaching in that. Because a lot of the time, we are alive, but we don't know we are living. We are running towards the future with all of our projects, with all of our idea of success, our idea of happiness. And we say, I'll wait until I get those conditions and then I will be more alive. I will be more happy. I will have more joy. Or we have the tendency, we live in the past. We live from the experience that we inherited. And we live with regret. We live with sorrow. And we live with what if, the idea of what if I could have done this? What if I could have done that? And slowly, we will lose ourselves, we will waste our life. We're all of the nature to get old. We're all of the nature to die. Everything that we hold dear to us, one day we will learn to let go. We will have to learn to let go. And one day we will return back to earth just like dust. And so if we don't learn to live deeply in the present moment, where it holds the past and it holds the future, then we will never have a chance to touch life in the present moment. And so to be able to bring the understanding and the insight of breathe, you are alive into your daily life, that is the art of meditation, and that is the art of mindfulness. And we're so grateful that Siddhartha saw that everyday life is a way of practice. We do need some structured time in order to have stillness, to sit still, so that we can learn to be more with ourselves. And today is so crucial to be still. It's so important, but it is so difficult because there are so much tendency for us to go to the next thing, information, media, and we feel left out if we're not included. So we have the fear of missing out, right? The young people have called it FOMO. And so sometimes we try our best to be everywhere so that we feel relevant, so that we feel that we understand everything. But that is also just a view. Lately, I was with a friend who is a very active person, and she's very busy, and she also practices the Dharma and the Plum village tradition. And one of her aspirations as she is growing older is she really wants to learn to slow down. So we had a very deep discussion about this. And after the discussion, she had the realization she will now have the practice of JOMO, the joy of missing out. She said in one of Thai's Dharma Talk, Thai said sometimes we have to know our limits because our life is limited. We know that we want to help the world because that is our aspiration, but we don't do it alone. And we do the best we can in our lifetime because that will be the greatest legacy that we can leave behind. And the future generation can learn from that, will take the baton, like the race. You also have to learn to pass the stick, to pass the torch of wisdom, so that they can continue you. So that when that moment comes, you are free. You are free to let go. And so the idea that we have to be everywhere, we have to be a part of everything, that is just a view that we have created. And if we are not a part of it, we feel that we are not contributing. But if we touch the present moment, and we know we are doing everything we can in our capacity, we are doing something, we're always offering. And so I really like that when my friend said, I will practice Jomo from now on. Every time the seed comes up, oh man, I should have been there. I should have been part of that Zoom call. And she said, okay. I breathed and I said, joy of missing out. Because I wasn't there, I was able to do something else. And that is a real practice. Because when we look into ourselves, into our life, time is a stream that is gonna always continue. You cannot bargain with time. Time just continues to flow. I'm a procrastinator. I'm still practicing with this. I always say, oh, I should do that. I should do that. I should do this. Oh, if I can do this, I will offer that. And the whole time of meditation, I'm thinking like that. Then when the bell invites, oh man, what did I do for the 30 minutes? And then my mindfulness was, I did nothing in the 30 minutes. And so sometimes I'm just still practicing just being in touch with life in the here and now. Feeling the joy of breathing. The joy of sitting. And sitting, the joy of doing nothing. Some of us here are team builders in companies. Some of us are teachers. Some of us are entrepreneurs. And I know how busy we have become. And especially during the last 2 years where everything went remotely. So there's even a stronger expectation for us to answer everything, because we have seen that to work, we don't have to be in each other's presence. We can still work, right? And if we're not careful, we're also gonna trap ourselves in this fast-paced habit. And so we have to also create moments for us to pause and to do nothing, to sit still. Sit still and heal. That sounds delicious. Wow. But that's an art. Because the moment we sit still, our mind starts to tell us, what are you doing? Time is money. Time is success. Time is to do something. And this dialogue has been transmitted to us and is also a collective energy. So sometimes to meditate is to have the courage to say no, stop, I will sit and I will be with myself. That is courage right there. Because also when we sit still, our little demons also manifest. And our language, sometimes we call them the maras. The voices that don't allow us to enjoy doing nothing. And it pulls us to the past, and then it pulls us to the future. Or it tells us that we're not good enough in the present moment. And we doubt ourselves. And we continue to cut ourselves with these stories. And so we also have to have the insight to look at our suffering, to look at our own stories that we create in our minds. And do we say, is this true? Or is this just a perception? Is this just a thought? And if we don't have time to look at our own thoughts, then we will continue to be a victim of it. And it will continue to create our world, and we will run after our habits, and our habits will continue to create our daily life that makes us suffer. And so that is why being still, sitting still, gives us the chance to recognize ourselves, to see our own habits, and to call our habits by its true name. To see the habits that we have inherited from our parents. Sometimes we do things and we ask, why do I do it? I've never been taught this, but I do it. And sometimes if you have a chance, go home and study your parents. Your parents can be your meditation. And I look deeply at my mom and dad, and I see the wonderful, wonderful talent that they have, and I start to see it in me. My mother is very neat and tidy. Everything is always done with perfection. And therefore, I also recognize that seed of perfection in me. When we do things not particularly the way we set out to do, I suffer. And in my practice, I start to say, hello, my seed of perfection from my mother. I breathe with you. There is nothing perfect in this world. Let me transform this seed. Right? And then there are also seeds that I have inherited that is very difficult to practice with. But we recognize it and we see that this is an opportunity to transform that seed for our parents. My parents grew up during the war, so in their daily life, what preoccupied their life and their mind was food. Do we have enough? And the fear of hunger was very strong. But I grew up in a better condition. I grew up in Canada, and we always had enough food. But when I came to the Sangha, we say that eating meditation doesn't begin when you eat. Eating meditation begins already when you line up. And I always notice, I always take more than I need. And every time when I cannot eat the food, I feel so regretful. And then I always ask myself, why am I doing this? Why do I do this to myself? I know that after the second bell, I can get up and get more food, if there's still food. But why do I let fear always conquer me during the serving of the food? And one day, just by sitting and waiting for the bell to be invited, I recognize, I was offered this seed of fear of not having enough by my mother and my father, by their past experience. Wow, that was a moment of liberation. And I said, Mom and Dad, I'm going to transform this seed for you. Because I have more conditions. I have more opportunity to devote my daily life to this understanding than my parents. And so there are some things that, as a continuation, that's the language we use in Plum Village, as the son, the daughter of our parents. There are some seeds I know that my mother and my father will not transform in this lifetime. And I cannot force them to transform. And I cannot expect them to transform for me to love them. I accept who they are. But I have the insight that I can transform for them. And so that gives me a lot of courage and a lot of aspiration to continue the path for them. So in the meditation of sitting, we get to see the past and the future and also the present, because we are always changing also. And that is the beauty of also life. In the meditation, the Buddha also touched the insight, the teachings of impermanence. Everything is always changing. And because we are always changing, we have the chance to always grow. Our suffering has a chance of transformation because it is also of the nature of impermanence. This is because that is. If we suffer, it is because of how we are living our life. And if we can look deeply and to see the causes of our suffering, we start to have understanding of the root of our suffering. And we start to see how we are feeding our suffering. And we start to have insight to see, if I continue to do this, I will continue to suffer. So if I start to feel and to see that if I change these habits, these way of approaching things, I will experience maybe the same situation, but very differently. And this has to come from the deep looking, the second wing of meditation, learning to stop and learning to look deeply. And if we see the root, the food of our suffering, then that also gives us the eye of looking at our happiness. Whenever we talk about suffering, we also have to talk about happiness. The two are two pairs that always go together, ill-being and well-being. And if there is ill-being, we also learn to identify the well-being in us. And if we have time to look at the food that nourishes our suffering, we also have to look at the food to nourish our happiness, nourish our well-being, and to give the time to also nourish our spiritual dimension. We all have the seed of spirituality in us. We don't have to be a Buddhist. As long as we are breathing, that is an opportunity to nourish our spiritual dimension. Our spiritual dimension is a place that is inside of us, not outside of us. The place where we can recognize what is manifesting in us and to have the moment to also touch the peace that is there in us. And so later on in the Siddhartha's path, later on we call it the Four Noble Truths, which helped him touch liberation. And that's what helped connect all of us. Because we are human beings, we all have the seed of suffering. And if we can understand our suffering, we start to have liberation, we have freedom. And so when Siddhartha was awakened, there was thunderstorm. Apparently this afternoon there may be some thunderstorm. And it was like a moment that was written down in history, a moment of joy, a moment of celebration. So the earth also celebrated. And there was a recount in that moment that Mara came and wanted to challenge the Buddha one more time. I gotta make sure he doesn't really touch awakening. And today we can see that the Mara is, in our understanding, it is the voice within. So that desires would come up, the power. It's like, are you sure you don't want to go back to be a king and to rule the people? Are you sure you don't want to indulge yourself in lust and desire? And many artists drew images of these experiences. And when they all come, like arrows shooting, and they all become flowers. And that's why today when we bathe the Buddha, the baby Buddha, there are flower petals in the water, the flower of humanity. The Buddha is like a flower of humanity, one of the flowers in the garden of humanity. And at that moment, because Siddhartha was alone, Mara asked him, who will witness your enlightenment? Who will justify that you are enlightened? Who will verify that you are enlightened? Nobody knows that you're becoming enlightened. It's only you. And in this moment, with his left hand, Gautama put his hand on the earth and he said, the earth is my witness. The earth is where I have manifested. The earth is the condition that is continuing to support me. And the earth is my witness today. And one day I will return back to the earth. That's why in the Buddha Hill, in Upper Hamlet, there are statues. You see one hand of the Buddha on his knees is supposed to touch the earth, but it couldn't. But that is the one of the meaning of the mudras, yeah? And so for us, the same. The earth is our witness of our practice. What we have learned is that the Buddha is not a god. The Buddha was a human being, just like each and every one of us. He had to go through suffering. He had to witness death. He had to witness the coming and going. And it arised the deep aspiration for him to touch understanding. And the Buddha was a teacher. And the teacher to help us touch our own nature of awakening. And that is very important. When I came to Plum Village, one of my love of this tradition was that Thai said that each and every one of us is the master of our life. Mindfulness is the key to being in control of what we do, of the legacy that we will leave behind. And therefore, it gave me the aspiration of, I want to leave the mark of kindness, compassion, joy, and inclusiveness. And so each and every one of us, we will also leave our legacy. And our legacy is not when we die, huh? Our legacy is already here. Through every action, through every breath, every word, every eye contact, and don't forget every smile. By practicing the path, we nourish the Buddha nature. Buddha, it means awakened. And this awakened nature is not for someone who was born before us 2,600 years ago. But the Buddha, we have to see it through the eye of the practice, it is the seed of mindfulness, the seed of awareness. And Thai, our teacher, said that most of us are just part-time Buddhas. We're just aware of moments in our day, but our practice is to become full-time Buddhas, to be more and more aware of every moment of our actions, body, speech, and mind. And this is an encouragement. And the Buddha, after he became a Buddha, he didn't stop practicing. Don't think after he became the Buddha, he said, all right, I'm done. Bye-bye, world. You guys suffer. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the ride for the rest of my life. Because everything needs food to survive. So the practice also needs food to survive. So the Buddha also had to maintain his practice, had to maintain his meditation to have more understanding. And that is also, we can see the human nature of the Buddha. And as a continuation of this beautiful legacy, this beautiful lineage, what has held our tradition alive till today is the third gem in the three gem, the Sangha jewel. Because in the Sangha, the Buddha can manifest through the awakened practice of everyone. And through the Sangha gem, the teachings of the Dharma can continue to be transmitted from generations to generation. And so today as a Sangha, when we practice together, we are practicing for ourselves, we're practicing for the future, but also we are honoring the beautiful past of the teachers from generations to generations before us, who have walked this path to understand and to continue to transmit the teaching. And the teachings have gone through many cycles so that it can be relevant today. And one thing that I know is that there's always suffering, just like the Buddha touched, so that our teaching can always be relevant. And the teaching is not through just the Dharma here, not through just the word, it's not through just this Dharma hall, but the teaching is our way of being, our way of life. And that is something that has an impact wherever you go. Many of us will leave Plum Village after our 2 weeks retreat. Do not underestimate an act of kindness. Do not underestimate an act of mindfulness. They can help touch the seed of understanding and compassion in others. Those of us who are social service, who have to put their lives sometimes in danger. Sometimes we feel like we want to give up because the suffering is so overwhelming. And we want to give in to the darkness, give in to the mud of the world. But if we all give in, then who will be the light to shine? And so each and every one of us is doing our part so that there is light. Even if it's just a little candle, that is still light. So the kindness that you can offer, even if it's just for one person, that one person can be a teacher for many. Just like that young girl who saw Siddhartha fainted on the path. That little action of just offering milk have allowed this human being to become the Buddha and to teach us today, to And for us to have a teacher like ours, Zen Master Thich Nhat Hanh, our teacher Thai, who has also manifested and who has devoted also his whole life to nonviolence and to peace. And everywhere he went, he spread the practice of meditation, the practice of love, the practice of nonviolence and compassion. And he never stopped. It was his joy. And there was one day, I was his attendant. We were in Nottingham. We were in Nottingham, England. And it was almost 10 years ago. We were celebrating, going to celebrate 30 years of Plum Village. And I said, Thai, how about next year, 30 years of Plum Village? Thai, take a break. Don't go on teaching tours. Rest. And we celebrate in Plum Village. We create all of the retreats in Plum Village. And I think it was tempting because Thai had a moment to really look at it. And he said, But then Thai looked at me and he said, but Thai is like, Thai has some antidote. Thai has cures. Thai have medicine. Thai has some vitamins that he can offer to people who needs medicine. And the role of the doctor is to offer the cure. And by offering, actually, Thai receives a lot. Thai doesn't get tired. Actually, Thai gets more energy. Thai feels more happy. And Thai knows why Thai is doing what Thai is doing. And in that moment, I understood that was a long no. But that was a reasoning to it. And I joined my palm and I said, yes, Thai. And that aspiration is also the continuation of the Buddha. Like after the Buddha got enlightened, the first thing he did was to create a Sangha, to create a community of practice. And that is the safest way to continue the lineage of our tradition, the lineage of the Buddha's Sangha. Even though we have transformed our robes into different colors, but we still are the true heirs of our root teacher, the Buddha. And today, as we come together to honor our teacher who has manifested many years ago, we honor him by inviting him into the present moment through all of us. So we will have a chance to have a ceremony together, to sit in stillness, to offer incense. When we offer incense, it's not just the fragrance. We offer the fragrance of our mindfulness, of our oneness, our fragrance of mindfulness, concentration, and insight. Those are the fragrance that we can offer every day. You don't see it, you may not smell it, but you can feel it. When someone is solid, you can feel their presence. And then we will have a chance to walk together in a line of procession. And each step we make, we dedicate some steps for the Buddha. Huh? I will dedicate 20 steps for Thai, even though he is not here, but he is here. And I will also dedicate some steps to our Buddha. And if we like, we can dedicate steps to our loved ones. And then we'll have a chance to water the baby Buddha. And the baby Buddha is the seed of awakening in every one of us. And because we are many, I don't know how many we are, but a few hundred that we are here, we will have a chance to water the Buddha one time. moderation. So we do it with care and love. And we do it with two hands. A lot of our mindful manners, everything we do with two hands, because with two hands it's like full awareness. So you hold the ladle, one hand, and the other hand on your hand that you are holding the ladle, and you really have the awareness of the action and the awareness of bathing the baby Buddha in us and in others. Every time we bow today, we can say a lotus to you and a Buddha to be, because all of us have Buddha nature. So it is Vesak, a day of the Buddha. The Buddha is not up there. The Buddha is in here and in every one of us. So a lotus to you, a Buddha to be to all of you. Thank you, dear Sangha. Let us listen to three sounds of the bell so that we can enjoy our mindful breathing. We can invite the Buddha to breathe with us. Breathing in, the Buddha is breathing. I don't have to breathe. Breathing out, my teacher is breathing. I don't need to breathe. I just enjoy the in and the out.